Good day everyone, my name is Adele Haramse. I am going to present to you my master's research topic. The topic was stress and coping of South African soldiers due to extended absence. Retired General William Sherman, an American Civil War general and a major architect of modern warfare, had the following to say about soldiers and their loyalty towards their country and their families. Man has two supreme loyalties, to country and to family. So long as their families are safe, they will defend their country, believing that by their sacrifice they are safeguarding the families also. But even the bonds of patriotism, discipline, and comradeship are loosened when the family itself is threatened. Please watch the special compilation video with me.
Hey, what?
High school, where his son Caleb is exercising, he sneaks in.
Caleb Lee, are you working hard?
Let's go! Come on! Come on!
A moment, 9 months in the making, timed perfectly. Not a dry eye in the stands, as father and daughter were reunited again.
Good luck, Vanessa. Oh! Wait a minute, he's not on the dunk team! Ladies and gentlemen, just returning from South Korea, Black Hawk Helicopter Crew Chief, Private First Class Brandon Covey!
Cried a little bit, but that's okay. That was his natural reaction. That's good. And that's really the reaction I thought he would have.
I don't know about you, but I've watched this video so many times over, and every time it leaves me teary-eyed. Although this video has its origin from the United States of America, the soldiers in South Africa experience the very same emotions once they are returning to their families. It is just not as well documented as abroad. All right, let's have a look at the table of contents. I'm going to speak about the research question, the introduction and the background, theoretical perspectives, the research participants and the interview questions, data analysis, the impact of absence on the soldier and families, the participants' stories, main findings, recommendations, limitations, and the conclusion. I had a vested interest in how soldiers in the South African National Defence Force deal with absence and how this absence contributes to stress experienced by them. Therefore, the research question was, how does extended absence contribute to stress in the South African National Defence Force? This study focused on understanding the impact extended absence has on South African National Defence Force soldiers. Many studies were conducted in the United States of America, the United Kingdom, Pakistan, Kenya, and then limited studies in South Africa, focusing on the impact absence has on stress and coping of soldiers during long periods of absence. Studies mostly focused on deployments. Limited research therefore exists on extended military developmental training. The aim of the study is to explore stress and coping of South African soldiers due to extended absence. The focus of the study was on the soldiers' perspectives and the challenges they experienced prior, during, and after the extended absence period, factors causing stress, and the effects of absence as perceived by the soldier. So the focus of the study was primarily on the soldiers themselves. However, there's a lot of room for studies on the impact on their families, their spouses, their life partners, and especially on their children. On top of that is the impact on male versus female soldiers and the impact of a mother being absent from her children for 12 months and more. The theoretical perspectives to the study included the transactional theory of stress and coping of Lazarus and Folkman, as well as the conservation of resources theory of Hopful. The transactional theory of stress and coping speaks to an individual's appraisal of the environment and the realization that the appraisal of that immediate situation demands more personal resources than what they are able to provide. This model also explained coping as a phenomenon that involves both cognitive and behavioral responses that individuals use in an attempt to manage internal or external stresses perceived to exceed their personal resources. People appraise their immediate circumstances or environment and then activate certain coping mechanisms to cope with stresses that threaten their personal resources. The conservation of resources theory of Hopful says that individuals are motivated to protect their current resources through conservation and to accumulate new resources where required. So this theory postulates that bodily and psychological stress reactions are based on an inborn survival response that mobilizes the person to take action to regain the lost or reduced resources. The research participants to this study included 12 senior male and female SA National Defence Force officers from different cultural backgrounds. That was particularly important to me because I wanted to determine whether the emotions and the experiences were the same across the board. These officers had to have children and they were married or in a life partnership at the time of the absence. They either attended a 6 months or longer deployment, which was internal or external to South Africa, or they had to attend a military professional course that was away from their families, or in some cases even both. And the participation was entirely voluntary. I was interested to know what the reason was that they were absent from their families in the first place. Also, I wanted to know how frequent those absences were. how often were they away from home, and then also what was the duration of those absences, the periods of absence. I also wanted to know what were the biggest challenges that they faced during that period of extended absence. And then ultimately what the impact was on themselves. That was the first priority. The impact on the soldier, as well as the impact on their spouse, their life partners, and their children. Lastly, I also wanted to determine whether there were any programs that existed that could potentially aid, or that did aid, the entire process, both for the soldier and for their families. After collecting the initial data, I analyzed it by making use of thematic analysis. The final themes were the impact of absence, the reason and duration of absence, the impact of stress, and coping mechanisms. I wanted to determine the impact of absence on the soldier, him or herself. It was reported to me that they often felt lonely and quite isolated from their families. Many soldiers did not have access to internet facilities while they were being away, making it extremely difficult to contact their families often. Some soldiers took medication in order to cope with the loss of their families or just being absent from them. Some experienced separation or divorce. From the 12 research participants that was part of my study, 2 marriages ended in divorce. Some of them struggled to cope while being away from their families. These soldiers experienced the stress and the absence caused, not only for themselves, but also for their families, their spouses, and their children. There were unplanned traumatic events that also contributed towards stress for the soldier, for their partners or their spouses, as well as for the children. Some of these soldiers experienced real trauma, such as death, missing family members' funerals, missing children's births, missing birthdays, important concerts, milestones, things they will never get back again, highlights in the family, and so forth. The impact of the absence on the spouse or the partner. Now, I would like to mention that the impact of the spouses or the partners was a recollection made through the mind of the soldier. I did not interview the spouses or the life partners as they were not part of my target population of the study. However, the soldiers were painfully aware of the damage done by their absence and the challenges faced by the spouses or the partners at home. So some of these challenges included they experienced stress and unreasonable expectations. They needed to keep the family going at all times. They often became independent of the soldier because of long periods of absence. They tend to find a new routine. They missed important dates and events. They had to deal with multiple transfers, relocations, and separations from a loved one. A lot of change involved there. They had to fulfill a role as a dual parent, but generally functioning as a single parent. So they had to be a father and a mother, or a mother and a father at the same time. They often faced divorce. Some of them often faced separation. And they strived for resilience and balance right through the period of absence. I think one of the biggest difficulties for me in this study was dealing with this specific slide, the impact of absence on the children. And once again, I didn't interview the children, but this is the recollection from the soldiers. Some of the studies and some of the soldiers also mentioned that military children are a hidden and vulnerable population. These children experience anxiety because of being separated from their parents on a continuous basis. These children often experience problems with eating, sleeping, throwing tantrums, and just in general the overall cognitive functioning. Problems often escalate after the return of the parent. And also the absence of these parents contribute to children's ill health, increased levels of separation anxiety, and overall parental stress. There were also reports of difficulties in communicating with these children. A study that was conducted by Shepard, Malotras and Israel in 2010 on the impact of deployment on US military families tabled its concern on the severe effects deployments have on children in military families, which can ultimately lead to long-term social, emotional and behavioral challenges. A further study by Stepka and Callaghan in 2016 coined the impact of military life on young children and their parents, revealed that approximately 40% of all military children fall within the age range of newborns to preschoolers. These children are exposed to parents who have been subjected to multiple deployments in high combat areas, thus impacting on the early experiences of these children and the foundation that is laid for early childhood development. The impact of a female soldier's absence on the family. Women in combat face different sets of challenges to those of their male counterparts, above and beyond the usual challenges that are associated with deployment. They experience direct combat and face physical injuries and trauma, and several military experiences during deployment, including being separated from their families, their work and communities. In the United States, the children of female soldiers on deployment mostly stay with other parents during the mother's deployment. But in the case of a single mother, the children are often required to move in with relatives, such as grandmothers or aunts. Women in the military tend to remain single, more so than their male counterparts. And female soldiers also tend not to have children because of the deployment requirements of the military, and they know that they might be often expected to be away from home. Also, obstacles to family time, parenting and social interaction is also a problem. Husbands of military women sometimes struggle to identify with the military community because mostly in this military community you will find a lot of females because mostly men are being deployed. The length and the frequency of a deployment varies between different countries. A study that was conducted by Bachman et al. In 2011 suggested that as deployment length increases, the potential for personnel to suffer adverse health effects also increases. Another study that was done in 2010 by Shepard et al., conducted in the United States, proved that shorter and more regular deployments had a lesser effect on soldiers than longer deployments. Longer deployments were strongly associated with maladjustment in the children of these soldiers. A recent study in South Africa stated that the duration and absence due to deployment has an adverse effect on the marriages of SANDF soldiers, and it makes the SANDF appear as an uncaring organization. In this study, the duration and frequency of absence were as follows. Some of the participants were on deployments, and that could stretch anything from 6 to 12 months. Sometimes they were on a 12-month cycle at a time, and sometimes that even occurred twice in 2 years. Some of the participants were on a military course, and those military courses were anything between 3 to 18 months. Sometimes they were often subjected to back-to-back courses. Military families are unique in the sense that they deal with stress far more than their civilian counterparts. So many factors influence the normal functioning of a military family. Military families are constantly facing possible relocation due to transfers, possibly due to promotions, absence due to deployment or due to military training, and trauma due to challenges that are associated with the demands of the military family. They experience a decline in emotional well-being, overall problems, and parental distress. The children, regardless of age, often experience the absence of a military parent as taxing, and therefore it was very important for me to share some of the participants' stories on their account of the impact of absence. One of the participants, participant 5, specifically said, "I have experienced a feeling of worthlessness. I lost my value. As a businesswoman, I continue because I am climbing the ladders, but as a mother and as a wife, It feels as if I'm losing there. Another participant, participant 12, said, my youngest child said, because you're always away from home, that is why Daddy decided to take someone else. And that is why Daddy doesn't love us anymore, because you weren't present. As mentioned earlier, I was very interested in hearing from the participants what was the actual reason for their absence. And then at the same time, I also wanted to know what was the duration of their absence. So participant 6 said to me that the first absence was something like 5 months. The second one was 6 months. The third one was like 8 to 9 months because they were not sure at what time they must return. Participant 11 shocked me a bit when he said, all my children, all of them, and he had 4 children, were born when I was not home. So military children often are exposed to additional external stresses that their civilian counterparts have never experienced, and absent parents cannot directly contribute to the development of these children's emerging social and emotional skills. I would like to share some more stories from the participants in terms of their impact of stress. Participant 2 said, I felt helpless and angry because I didn't feel that being away from your house for so long was actually worth it. You feel like you are not welcome in your own home, and the strain on your marriage, it's terrible. Participant 8 echoed that in a way. He said they went for counseling and stuff, but the counseling also opened a lot of wounds because you have to talk about things that you don't want to talk about. I would like to share a last slide on the impact of stress by the participants. Participant 4 said, I think you do a lot of damage to a normal family, a happy family, by separating them for such an extended period. A lot of people say it's a good thing because if you can withstand that, that's utter nonsense. We are a very close family and we live for each other. That's it. That's my reason for living. Participant 7 said, I'm telling you, a month away from home, I broke down. I could not take it. I was missing my kids. I was missing my wife. I was missing everything. And I still had another 6 months to go. Some of the participants also shared the coping mechanisms that they used just to try to alleviate the stress. Participant 6 said, how do you cope? You drink. We were drinking a lot. There was a lot of homesickness, and after 2 months, I couldn't cope at all. Everyone will be drinking. You can even check and say, what I am here is not what I am at home. And participant 7 said, I also needed to offload somewhere. I would go to the commander of the deployment, spend the day there, and I will cry with him. I must tell you, religion plays a very big role. We will pray, and then I feel light. I'm only focusing on some of the participant stories, but you're more than welcome to read all of them. One of the questions that I did ask the participants is whether there were programs that prepared them for leaving, as well as programs that also assisted them with the reintegration back into their families. Participant 2 said there was no formal program to prepare the family, but nothing you can do, nothing can prepare you completely for what waits for you. Participant 4 also said that there was no formal program that prepared us, so we had to use the 2 months prior to the course to, just to get used to the idea. The main findings of the study included the following. The duration of absence definitely contributes to the intensity of stress and the soldier's general ability to cope or not to cope. The challenges faced by these soldiers further contributed to their stress, as was mentioned prior. There was also a general lack of preparation from the soldier side as well as from the families prior, during and after the period of absence. Proper organizational support could provide aid to alleviate or avoid stress. Furthermore, the study revealed that during the experiences of stress and threatening situations, the participants sometimes and very often struggled to maintain their motivation to protect the available resources. Some participants even buffered their families from any resource loss or unpleasantness in order to protect them. It was evident from the data that the impact parental absence had on the children was mostly perceived as negative. Some of the participant responses revealed that children displayed emotional and behavioral problems, for example, poor academic performance, vulnerability, impaired mental well-being, and, depending on the number and length of absences, child depression and other external factors. After the study, certain recommendations were made. The first recommendation is the introduction of a framework to prepare and to reintegrate soldiers and their families after extended periods of absence. This is particularly important because these programs can be very well designed and developed to ensure that all the parties that are involved in the absence are adequately prepared before the deployment or before the military course and before the absence, as well as to help them, both parties, the soldier and the families, to reintegrate well back into society after an extended period of absence. The SANDF should also actively pursue a new approach to training and education, inclusive of a blended learning approach to adhere to training requirements and to cater for already limited resources. That would also potentially reduce the extended absence of soldiers on military courses. The SANDF should also pursue online education through public and private institutions of higher education where possible and within capacity limits. There were certain limitations to the study. Firstly, there were no South African studies that was done on the impact of extended absence that was due to a military professional course, and therefore it was difficult to do comparisons with other countries. Secondly, further studies would be required to measure the adverse effect of absence in general due to various organizational requirements. Further studies are required to compare the impact of absence across gender groupings, and studies speaking to the experiences of soldiers' spouses, life partners, and their children will definitely add value to the study. In conclusion, the main research findings showed that the duration of absence and challenges during absence contribute largely to the intensity of stress and the general inability of SANDF soldiers to cope. There seems to be a lack of preparation before and reintegration programs after absences, which could definitely mitigate the strain presented by the absence from home. Proper organizational and social support structures can aid in avoiding the stress. Finally, I'm leaving you with probably the most impactful quote that was given to me by one of the participants. When she told me that, I had goosebumps. I still have to this day when I read this. And then I realized the impact, especially on children, when their parents are not at home. I'm going to leave you with this quote. My youngest child said, "Because you're always away from home, that is why Daddy decided to take somebody else. And that is why Daddy doesn't love us anymore, because you are not present." Let us take a moment for that to sink in. Thank you very much for watching. And if you would like to engage with me, please send me an email. I would love to hear your comments or any questions on this presentation. Thank you.